It's your Wednesday daily delivery. Happy Western Conference Finals Game 1 day to those who celebrate. I am Michael Rand, back at it for another day. Hope you guys are doing great out there. Beautiful day after some unsettled stuff yesterday. It was rainy, it was thunder, it was lightning. South of here, it sounded like it got pretty nasty, but clear skies today, and we'll see what that means for the Timberwolves and Mavericks Game 1 tonight at Target Center. Chris Hine, Star Tribune Timberwolves beat writer, joins me here in just a few minutes to talk through all the matchups, all the possibilities, everything that we could see in this game and this series. Wolves on the precipice, 4 more wins. They will be in the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. It will not be easy by any stretch of the imagination, of course, though Dallas, a very good team, playing very well at the right time. Chris and I, like I said, will get into all of that in just a few minutes. Vikings, OTAs, got some Sam Darnold stuff to bring you at the end of the show. PWHL Minnesota, even their series 1-1. Eastern Conference Finals basketball started last night. I didn't watch much until the end, but it did not impress me all that much, especially Indiana, which gave that game away. First, though, what did I miss? The return of the Twins to the win column coincides with the dramatic return of the rally sausage. Now, this is funny. I was thinking yesterday morning after they lost their 7th straight game on Monday, I was thinking, where's the rally sausage in all this? I really was. It was such a big storyline during their 17-3 stretch where they were hitting well. They were rolling along, and it was like, okay, it's silly, right? Like a sausage isn't like doing some magical power to make them hit better, but so much of sports is belief. So much of sports is confidence. I think I've even said this before on the show, as it pertains to the rally sausage. That's a sentence I never thought I would say, as it pertains to the rally sausage. But as it pertains to the rally sausage, I've thought about Bull Durham, probably my favorite sports movie of all time. You might have a different one. I'm sure you do. But I love that movie because I think it gives an honest depiction of a lot of the nuances of sports. And one of those things is superstition. Like they have these superstitions and in that game, in that movie, and Tim Robbins' character wears like a garter belt, basically. He thinks it's lucky. He thinks it's lucky to wear it. And he's like, saying, should I stop wearing it? Like, it feels kind of silly. And Kevin Costner's like, no, like don't bleep with the winning streak, basically is what he said. If you think it's lucky, if you think this is lucky, if you think that's lucky, keep doing it, because that's kind of what a superstition is. It makes you feel like you have some extra edge. And that's what the Twins were getting from the rally sausage for a while. I mean, it could be coincidence, I don't know, but it seemed like it was fueling things. But then they went cold against the Yankees. They got swept. They got, they only got a 1 run that whole series. Probably blamed it a little bit on the sausage. I mean, the sausage is out of luck. No more luck in this rally sausage right here. It's more like a rally killing sausage. And so apparently the sausage didn't make the trip with them to Cleveland, wasn't on the early part of the Nationals trip. But according to Bobby Nightingale's intrepid reporting from this next game, from game 2 of that Nationals series in Washington Tuesday, said the rally sausage that they left behind after they were swept in New York was mailed to the nation's capital. It made it to the visitors' clubhouse in a UPS box around 3:30 p.m. Tuesday, and it was immediately placed near the batting cage. Quote, "That's our lucky sausage," said Byron Buxton. "We didn't have it in Cleveland and things didn't go right. Getting it back was big. I guess I'm going to hop on the train. I done touched it now." He said he vowed never to touch it before. Byron Buxton hits 2 home runs yesterday after touching the rally sausage. So there you go. 10-0 win. The bats explode. Byron Buxton hits 2 home runs. They score almost as many runs, 10, as they had in the previous 7 games combined when they scored just 12 in those 7 straight losses. Here's Rocco Baldelli, by the way, really briefly on the rally sausage.
I don't know if it booked its own flight or what was going on, but it showed up and it's still flying around.
So what do you do the rest of the year? Do you just keep trotting this thing out? Do you find, is it safe? Is it sanitary? I have no idea. Here's what I do know. The only time the Twins have played and hit well this year, they have had this ridiculous but not so ridiculous sausage at the center of it. So I don't think they can abandon it again. I think they have to keep bringing this thing out, bringing it with them, lugging it on the road, trying to keep it as, fresh as possible. I don't know. I have not seen it. I have not seen it personally, but you don't mess with a winning streak is what I'm saying. They got rid of a losing streak. They don't have a winning streak yet. They've just won 1 game, but they got to be feeling a lot better about themselves now. 25-23 on the season. What a weird way to get there. What a weird thing to bring them luck. But you know what? Whatever it is, you got to keep doing it. I don't know if PWHL Minnesota has any lucky objects that they bring with them, but they too have had a knack for turning things around. We've talked about the history. They lost 5 in a row entering the playoffs, barely got in, lost their first 2 postseason games via shutout. They were on the brink of elimination. They'd lost 7 straight games overall. Then they blitzed Toronto with 3 straight wins to win that series. Lost the opener the other day against Boston, but come back yesterday with a 3-0 win. Even that series 1-1, coming back to Minnesota now for Game 3. Rachel Blount from the Star Tribune, by the way, expecting to have her on one of the episodes tomorrow. I think we're going to split this into 2. There's going to be Wolves only, a dedicated Wolves podcast after Game 1 tonight. That will either go up really, really late tonight or really, really early tomorrow, depending on when that game finishes and when we can finish up recording and editing and things like that. But there'll be a separate show that's everything. There'll be the Wolves, and then there'll be another show that's everything but the Wolves. Rachel will be on to talk about PWHL Minnesota, to talk about that team, this series, their opportunity, things like that. But they are up. They're not up. They're tied now 1-1 in that series, a real opportunity coming home. And again, whenever it's been success in this playoffs, it feels like it's been fueled by their defense and their goaltending. They got a shutout yesterday from Nicole Hensley. She was in net. They have 2 excellent goaltenders, so it doesn't really matter who's in there. They are going to be in good shape. 1-1 in that series. Rachel and I will talk more about that on tomorrow's show, one of tomorrow's shows. Indiana will try to tie their series with Boston, just as Minnesota tied their series with Boston. Don't love the Pacers' chances, though, after they blew Game 1. That game was theirs. They had it. Silly turnovers in the end. Tyrese Halliburton he kicked away 2 balls almost unprompted in this game. They were up. They threw a ball away on an inbounds pass. They kicked away another ball. And they couldn't close it out. Boston ties it late in regulation on a Jaylen Brown corner 3 and then win it in overtime to steal Game 1, a game they had no business winning based on what I saw. Not impressed with what I saw of that game. And again, I only saw most of the last 3 or 4 minutes of regulation and overtime. I'm sure the game was better up until that point, and then tension, nerves, whatever got the best of them. But I wasn't terribly impressed. Gives me an early scout on the East. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but and again, the Celtics are playing without Porzingis. He maybe will be back later in this series against Indiana, and if he's not, you would imagine he could be trending to get back from his injury before the finals. He changes them a lot, so we can't make too many judgments about Boston, and they have made it this far without him, albeit on a fairly easy path, I would say, that they're on right now, but wasn't impressed with what I saw yesterday. We'll see what else we find out about both of those teams in this series, but Boston stealing that game when Indiana was already a pretty significant underdog, I would say, in this series, does not bode well for the Pacers' chances going forward.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, pre-mixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Since he hasn't told me he's sick of me yet, let's bring in Chris Hine, Star Tribune Timberwolves writer. Maybe he just hasn't told me that. Maybe he feels that. But Chris covers the Wolves, of course, for the Star Tribune. And no hotter team, no bigger story in this market right now, not by a long shot. Chris, Western Conference Finals start Wednesday night. And last time we talked, it was before Game 7 in Denver. Wolves, a 20-point comeback in that game. Maybe before we spin too far ahead to Dallas, which I want to spend most of my time on, what was it like to be in the building for that comeback? Did you have any sense? At what point did you think, yeah, okay, maybe this is happening?
I think when Mike Conley hit a three to put him down 6 in the third quarter.
Okay. Yep. I know that moment.
I think that was the moment where it felt real. When it went from 9 to 6 and it was like, oh wow, okay. This is happening right now. Like
McDaniels had just made a 3 and then Conley made one, I think, is what happened.
Yeah, they had their best stretch of shooting in the night during that. After they got down 20, like McDaniels, I think hit 2 threes in that stretch, and Conley hit another. And all of a sudden it went from 20 to 6 in like a heartbeat. It was crazy. I don't think I've experienced anything like. I was trying to think of instances of just my sports writing career where I've experienced things like that, games that I've covered in person, and can't really come up with it. It was kind of crazy.
It was the largest Game 7 halftime comeback in history. I mean, they were down 15 at half, and then Dallas gets 5 more quick ones. The Jamal Murray corner 3 made it 58-38, and they didn't seem to have much going for them at that point. What do you think, aside from the Wolves, chipping away, do you think, that the Denver just kind of ran out of gas? Because it kind of looked like it. They sure expended a lot of energy through the first 6.5 games.
Yeah, I think that definitely played a factor. I think fatigue, their lack of a bench, all of that, I really do think played a factor in the second half of that game. They gave it all they had in that first half, and in the second half when the Wolves were punching back, they just didn't seem to have an answer or the energy to summon. To have a full-on answer. Offensively, it didn't look like they had much motion.
Right.
All the Wolves were doing was just defending, Jokic Murray actions, which, they could probably do in their sleep at this this point. They weren't letting anybody else get loose to beat them. And offensively, they finally got some things in gear.
Right.
Like you said, some shots started to fall. And before you knew it, it was a rout. And it's funny how it kind of played out like a little microcosm of the series, where it's like Denver had their moments where they were crushing the Wolves, and then the Wolves found the gear mid-game that they used to trample Denver in the other games of the series, where it's like, both teams were capable of having halves of basketball where it looked like they could run the other out of the building. And it kind of just played out like that, one half to another, within the same game, So I guess from that standpoint, the Wolves, you should have never counted the Wolves out of it, because they had shown in this series that they could have stretches of basketball against Denver where they just play absolute lights out basketball. And that's exactly what happened.
So if, the narrative going into the series, and even as the series got deep, 6-7 games, was this could be the hardest team they face, certainly in the Western Conference. So now they've got Dallas, and this feels like it's going to be a really good series, I still think. I think Dallas is playing really well. Dallas, when they had Kyrie and Luka, for the only time they played this year against the Wolves, did beat the Wolves. That was the only time they beat them. Otherwise, it was a 3-1. But you can kind of throw that out because Dallas is a different team, obviously, with both of those guys healthy and with some of the trade deadline additions they made. Where are we at, do you think, with this series and kind of how you think of it going into it?
I haven't had much time to think about it,
No,
quite honestly.
right,
But just
sure.
just from a 30,000-foot view of watching Dallas last series, I pretty much watched every game of that Oklahoma
Mhm.
City series, and watching them throughout the season here. I harken back to something Chris Finch said after Game 7 of the Denver series, and
Mhm.
he said that he kept telling the team, our best is better than their
Yep.
best.
I remember that quote. I
And
like that quote too. That was a
yeah,
good one. Yeah.
and I feel the same way kind of about this series,
Yep.
where I feel like if the Timberwolves get to that level where they were in the Denver series for 3.5 of those games, for
Right.
not
Yeah.
quite all 4 games, but 3.5 of those games,
Yep.
if they can get to that level, I think they will. I think they will pull out the series. Now, that's the thing; they got to get to that level and stay at that level because Dallas will take advantage of it if they're not minding their stuff, especially on the defensive end of the floor. Dallas has also had vastly improved defensively ever since the trade deadline, and they got Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. They figured some things out defensively. They figured some things out offensively. That's why they are where they are in the conference finals right now. So this is not going to be a cakewalk. The Wolves have to play they have to play A games all the way through the series. They can't, just look at Dallas and say, well, this isn't Denver, so
Right.
we could afford to play at 80% or what have you. No, I mean, Dallas's defense will shut them down.
Yeah.
The Wolves offense is prone to, look at the first half of Game 7. The
Mhm.
Wolves offense can be prone to bouts of being ineffective. And Dallas made Oklahoma City look ineffective at times. And and anytime Dallas held them under 100 points, I think in that series they won the game.
Yeah.
So, as much as you want to talk about Dallas's offense with Kyrie and Luka, and they're certainly very dangerous, they are a very good defensive team now, and probably better. I think statistically in the playoffs, Denver and Dallas were about even,
Okay.
in terms of defensive rating. But I think the eye test, I think I would take Dallas's defense and how they played against Oklahoma City over what I saw from Denver in that series.
Well, I mean, they beat the Clippers and the Thunder, which I would say maybe the Wolves' path has been harder. I think Phoenix and Denver maybe a little bit tougher path than the Clippers, especially with the injuries the Clippers had by the end of that, and Oklahoma City just being a little untested in the playoffs. But they beat two good teams. This is I think this is setting up for another 6 or 7 gamer. To me, it just doesn't feel like this is going to be a quick series by any stretch.
No, I have a feeling it's going to be 6 or 7 as well. I don't think we're looking at a sweep, or a 5-game series in either direction. Especially like say Dallas comes out, wins Game 1 at home. I don't think it's suddenly going to be, oh, Dallas is on their way to a sweep.
Right.
Not going to happen, I don't think. But Dallas, they're going to be disciplined on the defensive end of the floor. They really did a good job of kind of taking the gaps away from Oklahoma City,
Okay.
Preventing the Thunder from getting into their drive and kick game, which the Thunder really thrive on. Now, Minnesota plays, maybe a little different stylistically, and I think Dallas is going to, if I had to anticipate something, I think Dallas is going to essentially try to pack the paint on the Wolves and make them hit shots from the outside. I think
Okay.
so. I think the Wolves' perimeter shooting is going to have to step up. So, guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, Conley, like they're going to have to hit these shots when they're open because they're going to have to hit them to open things up for Ant.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling you're going to see obviously probably a very similar game plan to what Denver did and what Phoenix did, which is to send multiple people at him at all times. And so that's going to create these openings on the perimeter, Can the Wolves hit shots? Can they find a way to the rim off these catches? You know, Jaden can take the ball to the basket. Nikhil can. Carl can. So, you know, we'll see kind of how they choose to attack whatever gaps or holes there might be in the Dallas defense if they start paying extra attention to Ant.
Ant has already said he's guarding Kyrie. Do you think is that the strategy? I think the matchups are fascinating because this is a much different like stylistic matchup in a lot of ways than Denver, right? Like because Dallas's two best players are guys that are going to more operate on the perimeter. I mean, Luka kind of does a little bit of everything, but he's by and large he's going to operate in space, and you're going to probably guard him with a 1, 2, or 3 and not a 4 generally, I would think. So like what, stylistically it's different, but how do you think the Wolves ideally kind of match up with Dallas, with the size they have and stuff like that?
I mean, I think it's in terms of just one-on-one defenders, I think the Wolves match up well with anybody in the league when it comes to just their ability to defend, especially on the perimeter. I would expect them to mix things up in this series. I don't think Ant's going to be specifically guarding Kyrie at all times, or Jaden's going to be specifically guarding Luka Doncic at all times. I think Ant might switch on to Doncic at times too, because he has the physicality to kind of stick with Doncic when he starts to play physical. I think Nikhil can come in and he could try to guard Kyrie in those situations. I even think Kyle Anderson might play a role in guarding Doncic with his size and Doncic isn't lightning fast, so they could use Kyle Anderson on him, I think, as well. So I think there's some options. There's some options there for the Wolves defensively, kind of 4 guys in the mix to guard those two, so they don't have to always have one guy glued to. Like Jaden doesn't have to be glued to Doncic for the whole time, and Ant doesn't have to be glued to Kyrie for the whole time. They can kind of give those guys some breaks.
Who does Conley guard then? It's a little, with the way the Mavs are, it's a little bit unusual in terms of kind of cross matchups and stuff like that.
It is a little funky. We'll see. We didn't really delve into that too much with him today. Maybe he tries to take Kyrie at certain points as well, especially if Kyrie's just going to play ISO,
right?
Some ISO ball on him. I could see that for some possessions. Why not, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're maybe trying to give Ant at least a little bit of a break,
right?
So yeah, we'll see how this all fits in. It's a fascinating group. Like the roster construction here is so much different from what they have seen so far in the playoffs, because there is more height.
Yep.
There's more height here than they've seen in the playoffs. Especially like Phoenix basically just had Nurkic.
Yep.
The Nuggets had, Jokic and to another extent Aaron Gordon, but when you have a Derek Lively, a Daniel Gafford, a PJ Washington, and Derek Jones, guys like that's a lot of length. There's a lot of length on the floor for Dallas in this series. So, it is a very different matchup from that perspective.
The national love affair with the Wolves seems to have resumed after the brief hiatus of Denver winning those 3 games, and especially like the Ant Towns comedy duo at the podium the other night. Like Ant seems like he can say nothing wrong right now. He's just on fire. Everybody loves everything he does. What makes why can Ant say whatever he wants and it's okay?
Because I think part of it is he does it with a smile on his face all the time. He's got that kind of charisma and that charm. He's authentically himself at all times, and
unfiltered.
Unfiltered. And I think people just enjoy when people are just themselves in front of a camera, right? Like you're not putting on a false front for the cameras. Like you just are yourself, and I think people just, no matter what your personality is, I think people just respect that in general.
Yeah.
Or like that. So I think it's a little bit of everything. He's just authentic, and all indications are like how he is in front of the camera is how he is behind the scenes too. And when the cameras aren't rolling, everybody kind of speaks about how he always comes in with a positive attitude, always is uplifting of his teammates, competitive, really competitive, but at the same time, goes about his business in a way that empowers those around him. And I think you can feel that energy coming from him when he's at the podium in these press conferences.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about him necessarily in this sense that I'm going to bring up, but I'm curious what you think about, first series, Wolves and Suns. There was a lot of narrative going in that, hey, Wolves 0-3 against Phoenix during the regular season. I think there was even like series odds that said Phoenix was a slight favorite, even though the Wolves had won way more games during the year and were, had the home court. Denver was the series favorite in that series, and obviously things went all over the map with that over 7 games. It's a little different now. I think the Wolves are pretty, not overwhelming, but they're definitely a favorite to win this series, both just in terms of like how you would eye test it, but also I think the, any kind of wagering odds, I think it's got them kind of like at a 60-40 kind of split in terms of what the implied odds are of winning the series. How do you think they handle being kind of the favorites or kind of being the team that is expected to win at this moment? Because I don't think that was necessarily the case in the first 2 rounds.
It's a good question. And I think, we have some recent evidence that they didn't quite handle it all that well between games 2 and 3 of the Denver series. Chris Finch, during the 3-game losing streak there was, and some of the players even said like, for 3 days, that 3-day break between games 2 and 3, maybe they got a little too high on themselves and a little lazy, lost a little bit of their edge. Right. So, do they learn from that experience and try to, still come out, on fire on Wednesday night, or, do they revert back to that where it's like, oh, okay, we came back against Denver for 2 games. We, we're the toast of the NBA again. So, and I think you just have to guard against, I just think you have to guard against the fact that you're not playing Denver anymore and you're playing Dallas, who is quote unquote perceived as a lesser opponent, Right. And so many people were saying that the winner of the Denver Minnesota series is probably going to go right to the finals. Right.
Yeah.
I think you just have to guard against that because again, if you are not playing up to your potential, Dallas will beat you. They're more than capable. So in the Phoenix series, they did a good job of keeping their foot on the gas pedal. In those games against Phoenix, or in Phoenix, especially games 3 and 4. Denver's a much better opponent than Phoenix, so they were able to obviously take advantage of the Wolves' lapses in focus and concentration, maybe. But I'm not expecting. I'm not sure what I should say. What Wolves team is going to show up in terms of intensity and focus on Wednesday night. You'd like to think that they're going to come out fired up, but they're 5-5 at home in the last 3 years in the playoffs.
Sure.
So their home record is spotty in front of the crowd. So I'm not sure what to expect tomorrow night. I really don't.
Yeah, I suppose in this postseason right now they're 5-1 on the road. Is that what it would be?
They are 5-1 on the road. Yeah, that's a crazy stat. Yeah,
5-1 on the road. I mean, their home record's pretty good this year. They're 2-0, and then they were 3-2 at home this year at least. So it's a little bit better. But yeah, they've been a better. Yeah, better. But I think they've looked just generally better on the road this year, and I think Finch has talked about that a little bit. You get away from home. You kind of like all you focus on is basketball. So it will be interesting to see what kind of focus they have. I think they've answered some of those questions along the way here, even if they did drift a little bit between games 2 and 3 of the Denver series and kind of lost some of that mojo. Some of that was just Denver playing a lot better and finding stuff. So I'm not as concerned about that as I might have been with past Wolves teams. I think part of that is their emotional maturity still fluctuates a bit, but it's much higher than it has been in the past. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns is maybe a barometer of that in both how he's played and how he's reacted so far in this postseason.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think games 6 and 7 to me was a step up for this franchise and for this group as a whole.
Sure.
I wasn't sure that this group had that in them.
Yeah.
I really didn't. To come back from 3-2 against the defending champions 2 nights in a row or 2 games in a row and do what they did, I wasn't sure if they had that in them. And Carl as well. You know, he is deservedly getting his flowers for how he played in those 2 games, and they are not here right now without him.
No, absolutely.
And you're right. You know, him and I think to another extent, Jaden McDaniels too is an emotional barometer for this team. You know, those 2 guys showed up in huge ways in game 6 and 7. You know, even when things weren't going well in game 7, they never let it bother them or get to their heads or let the officials get to their heads or what have you. And those 2 guys are were a huge reason why they were able to pull out, especially that game 7.
Yeah.
So I was, you know, I don't want to say surprise is the word, but man, that's about as big of a challenge as you can get outside of maybe, you know, facing a deficit in the finals.
Sure.
You know, and having to win 2 games on the road, maybe to win it or whatever, 2 games in a row to win a championship. But staring down the defending champions and having to do that, what they did, truly impressive, and not something I would have thought they were capable of last year, you know, at this time, but they really showed something.
How about Jaden trying to bounce it to himself for a dunk with about 20 seconds left in that game 7?
Yeah, you know, he loves to do that from time to time.
Youthful exuberance, right?
Yeah, little. I remember at the end of the Phoenix game, cameras kind of caught him pointing Devin Booker off the floor. If you remember that,
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
I do remember the dunk try.
He's basically going up to Devin Booker as time ran out in game 4 and saying, you know, here's the exit, sir. You know,
okay,
please go this way.
That doesn't bother me as much as trying to dunk in a 7-point game with 20 seconds left.
Jaden also he did that. Also, somebody put the clip on YouTube or on Twitter.
Yeah,
because these moments of his were starting to go viral the last 24 hours. Somebody put a clip of him from the Utah game, the game where Ant had the big dunk over John Collins.
Yeah.
Jaden had a 3. Jaden shot a 3 at the buzzer in that game when the Wolves were up by like 8 or 9 or something like that. Okay. And he took a 3 right as the buzzer expired. And he made it. He made it.
Okay.
And it drew some boos from the fans in Utah. So he likes to have a little fun sometimes at the end of games, I guess is the best way to put it. Hey, second team all defense for Mr. McDaniels.
Yeah. And obviously
his
Rudy.
First all defensive team berth.
Obviously Rudy was defensive player of the year, but plenty of, you get those team awards. I mean, you got 6th man of the year. You got Ant was in the MVP voting. You know, what Conley won an award too, right? It was more of like a
teammate of the year.
Teammate of the year, which is, which is still a valuable award. I think Royce referred to him as a gentleman, and I was like, that's about right. Like he's just you got this like court full of like guys that are just going at each other, and he's got Mike Conley over here, who's definitely a competitor, but it's just kind of like a little bit more of a gentleman. Yeah,
it's a balance on this team. You know, you have you have guys that run. I think you have a lot of guys that run really hot on this team sometimes, you know, and even Mike Conley will tell you that, you know, he's as competitive as they come. He just has learned to channel it differently than some of these other guys have. But guys like, you know, Ant's obviously super fire and competitive. Carl sometimes goes overboard, as we know, but he's done a better job this postseason of not doing that.
Yeah.
Not, you know, I still think Naz Reid and Jaden, you know, they deal with that from time to time as well. But, you know, it seems like if they have those moments within a game, they're able to recollect. Like, I think Naz Reid I think he was frustrated in game 1, you know, with his playing time and things like that. But he didn't take himself out of the game. And when they needed him in the 4th quarter, did he show up in a big way. Yeah. You know, so I think they're learning how to better process all this stuff and deal with it.
Final thing, Chris, you're not supposed to usually, I don't think, go from, hey, a couple of first round losses to the finals, but the path is there and they're playing at a level that can get them there. Do you think, is it happening? Are they doing this? Are they getting to the finals?
I'm staying out of the prediction game.
Yeah, you don't have to predict, but like, what's your sense? Like, because they got it in them, right? They've got it in them.
I think they have it in them because I think, Denver was such a huge test, and I don't see Dallas. What's the word? How do I want to phrase this? I don't see Dallas providing any more of a challenge than Denver provided.
Fair. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe they're on the same level, right?
Right.
Maybe they offer as difficult of a challenge, but maybe not more of a challenge.
That's fair.
And I do think that if the Wolves play up to the standard that we've seen them set this postseason, then their chances of making it to the finals are very good.
Yeah,
let's just put it that way.
Yep. I think it goes back to the Finch quote. It's like, I think their best is better than Dallas's best, especially when you factor in home court, things like that, if they can use it to their benefit. Chris Hine, appreciate it as always. I'm fairly certain I'll be bugging you again at some point, not too far from now, but till then,
I always have time for you, Mr.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Follow Chris's coverage. We'll have wall-to-wall blanket coverage. We're going to do bonus podcasts, things like that from the series. But follow Chris's writing and everybody else's. And Chris, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Great stuff from Chris, as usual. One postscript. I saw this the other day. I haven't seen this confirmed anywhere else, but I saw from Sports Media Watch that Draymond Green, who has done some work with the Inside the NBA crew, and the Inside the NBA crew will be here live for the Western Conference playoffs. Of course, that was the whole Anthony Edwards, Charles Barkley exchange after the Wolves beat Denver in Game 7 the other night that has taken off virally in a meme of its own. So that crew's going to be here to do their shows live. I've heard Draymond Green, I've read from Sports Media Watch that Draymond Green is supposed to be part of that. So if he's here, he has been a vocal critic of Rudy Gobert. He's been a physical critic of Rudy Gobert, putting him in that headlock earlier in the year that got him suspended. I would be curious to see how he is received at Target Center tonight, if he is in fact there as part of that crew. Don't let that distract you from the game itself, but if you are at Target Center, I would expect there to be some pretty lusty boos for Mr. Draymond Green, who has been wrong about Rudy Gobert, dreadfully so, in these playoffs, much to the Wolves' benefit. Let's finish with the cooler Vikings OTAs, organized team activities. Sounds, that's just silly, right? Organized team activities. What are these guys for? They need to go to nap time and then have a snack. Organized team activities. Sounds like something that's part of your preschool day. It's just a practice. It's really what it is, just an early practice. Don't have to be there. Justin Jefferson isn't there. He wants a new contract. They're talking about it. They've been talking about it for like a year. I'm kind of bored with that. Just get it done. Get it done, guys. But he's not there. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson's not there. He's still recovering from his injury from the offseason. But all the new quarterbacks are there. Sam Darnold was there. JJ McCarthy was there. Darnold taking first-team reps. Thought this was interesting. He was asked about his relationship and building that already with J.J. McCarthy, the number 10 overall pick. Here was Darnold on McCarthy and just kind of the quarterback room in general.
Yeah, J.J.'s been great. Just with him coming here, I know before we even got on the field together, we were at the one of the Wolves games together. So we got to chat a little bit there and just. I was like, first of all, dude, congratulations on getting drafted. It's a great experience, and I know it flies by. So, he's been great so far, and continuing to learn and be a great quarterback in that room. I feel like just with JJ, just talking to him a little bit, I feel like, the pressure that he experienced at Michigan and playing in a national championship, and obviously you get drafted high, that pressure kind of comes with it. But it's, I feel like he's kind of already been there. He's felt that pressure a little bit before. Obviously, this is the next level. But, again, like any questions, anything that he's curious about, he's been asking me questions and I've been answering. So just going to continue to have that bond.
Darnold obviously knows he is a placeholder. That doesn't mean he doesn't want to succeed, doesn't mean he doesn't want to hold on to the starting job for as long as it can be his. A pretty pivotal moment in his career, year 7. He's been here before. Like you said, he was the number 3 overall pick. He's been through this grind. He knows what it's like to have the burden of expectations. Probably didn't come into as good a spot with the Jets, and I can say, I'm going to say probably, he didn't come into as good a spot with the Jets in 2018 as J.J. McCarthy comes into now, or even as Sam Darnold comes into now with the Vikings. But how these guys react, how they make the most of this, will tell a lot about the future of this franchise. So we will see how all of that plays out the rest of the year. That'll do it for me today. Like I said, it's going to be busy. Expecting to do bonus episodes off of almost all of these games. I don't know, game 3, maybe not, because it's Sunday night going into Memorial Day weekend. But almost all these other games, maybe all of them, depending on what happens, especially tonight and Friday. There'll be extra episodes, so listen for that. Everybody's got Wolves fever, and for good reason. This is quite a run they're on. This is an amazing time to be a sports fan in Minnesota, and I can't wait to talk about it tonight, probably with Chip Scoggins after Game 1. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk to you very soon.